There came a time in my life where I became curious about who my grandparents were and why I almost never saw them. I never met either of my biological grandmothers, and only one of my grandfathers was actually involved in my life for a long period of time. The only response I was ever given was, "Let's talk about it when you're older, Baba." Years passed, and every time I asked, I would get the same response. "Let's talk about it later. Remind me tomorrow. Let's ask your mama, daddy, etc." They told me stories about my grandfathers, but I never heard about my grandmothers on either side of my family. I was told that there was nothing to say about them, and that one had passed away a few years before I was born, and the other lived so far away that it would be difficult to ever meet her. I was still curious. I wanted to know who these women were and why they were never talked about by either one of my parents. So this year, I did some digging. I'm 19 years old, born in 2002, and when both of my parents had left the house to go shopping, an idea struck me. Our family computer, the one that all of us were allowed to use at will any time of the day. It never had a password, but it had tens of thousands of photos just stored away in the deepest and darkest basement of the device. They were going shopping at a place an hour down the freeway, so I knew they would be gone for hours. So with that thought, I turned on the computer and started going through every photo I could find. Most of them were ones that I had seen before. Family photos of us at dinner, on vacation, at amusement parks, at parties, just laughing and being a typical happy family. I remember taking some of these pictures myself, but the further down the folders I went, the older the photos became. My finger was practically glued to the arrow keys, just tapping it to flip through the endless slideshow and seeing so many parts of my life that had passed by. I did start to reminisce. It was nice to remind myself of all these childhood memories that I had almost forgotten. The third to last folder I opened, the dates continued to get further and further away. December 2002, November 2002, October, September, August, July, June. The photos stopped. The last photo in that folder, titled June 25th, 2002, baby's first photo. Sure enough, it was a slightly grainy photo of my dad in his early 30s, holding me as a baby when I was first born, still in the hospital and wrapped in a baby blue blanket against his chest. He had his long black hair tied back in a ponytail at the base of his neck and had his eyes just as striking with jubilation as he does now. Just seeing how much he has changed makes me want to cry. And seeing him so happy in that photo warms my heart, and I admit I stared at it for a while myself. I was too young to remember what I saw in the moment, but I could imagine it. A part of me was ready to stop and just enjoy the slideshow of my life captured in frames, but as I closed out of the photos and saw the open folders on the computer again, there were two more folders, one titled as 1980s to 90s, and the other titled as 1950s through the 60s. I hadn't found anything relating to my grandmothers, so as I saw those, I figured they were pictures of my parents before me and my brother were born. So I clicked on the 1990s folder, and inside were only 3 photos. My throat completely locked up as I saw the first picture titled as October 23rd, 1993. It was a picture of me leaning up against a parked red pickup truck. My right leg was propped up on the front of the truck hood, showing off a flashy pair of ankle-high black heels. I was dressed in all black, with slightly boot-cut black jeans and a V-cut long-sleeve black shirt that was so low that the neckline had to be adjusted as supported, with crisscrossing laces just to hide my bust. It was the same loose, flowing golden blonde hair I had when I was 16 years old. But despite the woman in the picture looking exactly like me, I didn't at all remember this photo. Even looking at the background with the driveway and the dimly gray houses, it wasn't a place I recognized, and just based on how old the woman in the photo was, if it was me, then this was taken relatively recently. The problem is that it wasn't something I've ever done. Never in my life have I owned a top with a neckline that low, or black heels that look like that. Never have I met someone who owned a red pickup truck or lived in a house that looked as small and uncared for as the one in the background of this photo were. I was uneasy. I thought it was possible that it wasn't me in the photo and that it was my mom, but the scary part is that it looked exactly like me in every possible way. From her height, her demeanor, her smile, and the arrangement of her teeth. It's just a little unsettling. There wasn't much to dwell on, so I took a sip from my water glass, tapping the right arrow key to move on to the next one, but as I saw this one, I spat the water back into my cup and just stared in awe at this second photo. It was another picture of the same woman, except this time she was much younger. A practical carbon copy of me when I was around 10 years old, sitting on a wooden stool with a woman who strongly resembled my mom, standing behind me, bracing my shoulders lovingly. A family photo of sorts, since my mom stood behind me and my little brother, all of us staring at the camera. This time, I had a golden dress with a white lace around the cuffs, the collar, and the trim of the skirt. This is definitely not something I remember wearing. And it really makes me wonder if this was me and my brother, since I never owned a dress like that. And my brother was wearing a beige sweater over a white collared shirt, both tucked into his pants. My brother refuses to wear something so formal outside of weddings and funerals, so there were a lot of questions running through my head. Who were these people? Was this us? Why do they look like us? Why can't I remember any of this? That photo was just titled as Family Photo 1987. If that date was correct, then the people in this photo couldn't have been me and my brother. Neither of us were even born yet. But they looked exactly like us. Perfect carbon copies down to the strand of hair that I like falling over my face, and both of our insistence to fold our hands, not weave them, when we sit. My mind was completely locked, and I rushed to see the third photo in this folder. Couldn't mount file. The disk image file is corrupted. A part of me was relieved, but as I closed out of the photos again, there was one more folder that I hadn't opened. 1950s to 60s. There was no hesitation as I clicked to open that, and inside were two more photos, both of which I could vaguely make out from the photo icons. These were still intact, so I opened both of them, placing them side by side so I could see them both. These photos were old, perfectly black and white with a certain clarity that gave them the feel of World War II photographs. They had clearly been scanned on a printer to be added to the computer since the edges were chipped with neglect. Creases and wrinkles marked the entire surface, showing the loved nature of whoever took this photo. It was another picture of me and my brother. I was older than I am now, probably mid-20s, and I was standing in front of a bookshelf in a library. 3 large textbooks were being hugged against my chest by my left arm, while my right arm was extended slightly above my head to pull another book free. My little brother was standing behind me, his hand over mine as he grabbed the same book. There was a sense I got from seeing it that I may have dropped it, so he was helping me get it down. Both of us were wearing IDs on the right side of our chests, but while he was wearing a white Oxford t-shirt tucked into a pair of black dress pants, I was in a gray or beige collared knee-length dress, with my sleeves rolled up above my elbows. My hair was still down, the same length as mine is today, and I recognized a mole on the side of my neck, the same place I have one today. Both of us were looking at the camera laughing, clearly reacting to someone sneaking the photo without our knowledge or permission. This was just getting weird for me. There was no way that the people in these photos could have been my brother and I, right? We weren't even considered for existence in the 1950s, and the people in this photo were older than I am now by several years. My spots were in the same place, same hairstyle, same smile. My brother was clean shaven, but he was much taller than me in that photo. That's not something he is now, but he's turning 15 this year, so I expect when he is fully grown, he might be that tall. It's freaky to look at. The last photo was one that really halted my breath. If the others before it didn't, then this one definitely did. It was another picture of me, still in my mid-20s, but this time, I was dressed in a long white train dress, my hair pulled up against my head, with little metal butterfly-shaped pins and a thin vein wafting in front of my face, like a draft of magic was causing my entire body to glow. I was completely enamored in the photo. My smile was so wide that it may have been the happiest day of my life. My hands were woven behind a young gentleman's neck as he carefully held my waist. He had a striking resemblance to my dad, but we were dancing. Presumably at a wedding, but I know this wasn't me. It couldn't have been. The date on the photo, December 2nd, 1965. A sharp jittering of keys from outside of the front door completely broke my immersion, but I didn't bother minimizing the photos. The rolling desk chair squeaked slightly as I spun back, bracing my hands on the front of the seat as both of my aging parents stepped through, their arms weighed down with bags filled with clothes. "Hey, Baba," my mom called, setting her collection on the sofa. But the more I looked at her, the more I started to think about how people thought of us as sisters occasionally. Sometimes mother and daughter, but our resemblances was suddenly more striking than I have ever really bothered to pay attention to. My mom noticed my uneasiness. "Something wrong?" "Why do you have these photos?" I flicked my finger at the computer screen, drawing both of their attention, and they both exchanged a glance. My mom bit her bottom lip, so my dad spoke up. "They are family photos." He said it so simply as if it should have been obvious. "That's Grandma Veracona." He pointed at my twin in both of the photos before moving on to my brother's twin, Great Uncle Michael. His finger moved to the groom, Grandpa Al. That name struck me like a battering ram. Grandpa Al was the only grandparent who had actually bothered to be a part of my life. He passed away in 2017, but when he was alive, we had a very close relationship, and he always loved taking me places that I loved. Family dinners, play dates with my friends, shopping, just anything I wanted to do, he would do with me, and he spoiled me beyond imagining. Grandpa Al, when he was younger, looked exactly like my dad, and now that he drew that connection, I was starting to see features from my grandpa in my dad's face. They looked more alike than I ever realized. So wait, I closed out of the photos, bringing up the ones from the 1980s and 90s again. Who were these people then? My mom sighed, pointing to the family portrait and at my twin again. "That's me." She moved to the little boy. "My brother, your Uncle Hagen?" Her hand moved to the adult. "That's my mama, Grandma Veronica." "But we all look identical. I thought these were pictures of me and my brother." Mom shook her head slightly. "This is a very complicated reoccurrence in our family." She sighed, turning to my dad for help, but he only motioned his head at me, clearly telling her to keep going. "I should tell you when you're older." She started away, and I launched to my feet, sending the desk chair wheeling to the other side of the room. "How much older do you want me to be?" She turned back to me, clearly seeing the frustration on my face. "Every time I ask, it's the same thing over and over again. When are you going to finally tell me?" She sighed, crossing her arms. "Later." Whenever she said something like that, I knew she was just putting it off. She didn't want to tell me. I occupied our family computer long into the night, moving through every photo I could find and making notes in my phone of any dates that I could use. I marked birthdays, anniversaries, holiday celebrations, just anything that seemed like it might be important, and after nearly 6 hours of nonstop study, the pieces started to fall into place. My brother and I are 4 years apart in age. So are my mom and her little brother, and so are my grandmother and her little brother. Both my mother and grandmother got married on December 2nd, married a man 8 years older than them, married at age 24, and had children at 25. Both had a daughter as their firstborn, and both had a second child that was a son born exactly 4 years and 16 days after the first. Both had long aurora blonde hair, blue eyes, stood at 5'7", and had an affinity for spicy food and chocolate. Great-grandmother and grandmother died of mysterious illnesses that were never identified at age 55, and both were strongly against racism, segregation in the United States, the wars overseas, and strongly supported free healthcare. Both my mother and grandmother spoke English, German, and Spanish fluently, while my grandfather and dad spoke English, French, and Spanish. All of the men in my family have central heterochromia, with yellow and blue eyes as well as black hair, stand at 5'9", and have an affinity for fish food dishes and egg custard. Great-great-grandfather, great-grandfather, grandfather, and dad were shot at age 18, got into car accidents at 27, and bloody fights at age 51. All 4 men were the middle brothers out of 3, and all of their brothers died prematurely while fighting other people. History is repeating itself too closely for me to be comfortable with. If this pattern repeats again, then my life is completely mapped out. I'm going to get married at age 24 to a man 8 years older than me. I'll become a mother at age 25, first bearing a healthy baby girl, and exactly 4 years and 16 days later, a son. At some point, I will learn German, since I already speak Spanish, and throughout my entire life, I will maintain a close relationship with my brother. When I am 43 or 44, my husband will get into a fight that will nearly kill him, and a decade later, at 55, I will die from some unknown illness. I'm 19 now. The first of these trends isn't a long time away, and checking my family tree, these have proven to be true coincidences. Every recorded generation in my family follows this trend, but I don't know how far back it goes. It could go back centuries, but I can't be sure. All I can finalize it with is an extra note from my life. One of my senior university friends, a boy that I've been crushing on for a while now, he falls into these same trends. The middle brother out of 3, both of which have passed away. He was shot in the chest at age 18 while trying to prevent a robbery. He speaks English, French, and Spanish, has black hair, and yellow and blue eyes. I don't even know what the odds of this being possible are, but the patterns have been drawn. This is my life. It will probably be this way with my children, and my grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. I can't be certain. It's too soon to tell. Well, that was quite the unnerving ending, wasn't it? At the exact time, nothing to really look forward to after that, I'd say. Might as well. Never mind. Until next time, please leave a like, a subscribe, comment, interact with me. It's kind of what I'm here for. Just let me know I'm doing a pretty good job and I can keep this going. Until then, until next time, this has been Harrow's Edge.